Hey there, badass dream makers. This is the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. It's Alex, your badass dream maker host. I'm here because I believe that all humans deeply desire and thrive in loving relationships. And let me tell you, it's possible because many do find the love of their dreams and more. I'm just here as a guide to help you through the variety of obstacles and hurdles in dating and relationships so that you can also find the love of your dreams. And you're bound to learn about yourself as well. So, 2-in-1 deal. We will get deep here, and you may feel triggered at times. Triggers and discomfort are part of a growth process. However, please use discretion as to how much discomfort you are ready for. Now, let's jump into this juicy episode and get you what you want. Hello. Welcome back to the Relationship of Your Dreams podcast. This is Alex, your host. Today we have another guest, and her name is Talia Pamensky. She is a self-development coach, healer, and yogi. She hosts the Wisdom Within podcast and has facilitated international workshops and retreats to help people reconnect with their power, radiance, and joy. Her journey began with studying theology at Cambridge University, where she explored Buddhism, Hinduism, and mindfulness. And as president of the Mindfulness Society, she became passionate about sharing teachings that changed her own life. After solo traveling the world, learning from healers, she now guides others to discover the light within them. So Talia is another peer of mine from QCA, so Quantum Coaching Academy, which is where we got certification for life coaching. And I always knew that our paths would cross again, and I wasn't sure when or how. And this proves to be one of the first ways that our paths are crossing again. And Talia is amazing. She's done so much solo traveling, as I just mentioned, and she has gained so many insights and growth from that time period. And I'm excited to share her story and for her to share her story on this podcast, and especially her diving into a feminine journey and learning to just let go and surrender, and how that feminine masculine balance looks now in her own life. And such an amazing story, so many cool places she's gone, and she has some amazing teachings for you all. So if you want to get in touch with Talia, get in touch with her via Instagram at Talia Pamensky or on her website, which is taliapamensky.com. She's hosting an online event on returning to the Wisdom Within on October 29th. And she has limited spots available for one-to-one sessions and will be a guide on 2 retreats next year, one in France for just women, and then one in April in Iceland for all genders. That is a couples retreat in June. So those will be posted in the show notes, and we'll be talking about it later in the episode as well. So let's welcome Talia. Well, hello, Talia. Welcome to my podcast. Thank you for being on this podcast. I'm very excited because I just had this intuition that since I met you, even through the online space from QCA, the Quantum Coaching Academy, which we both got a certification from, that I'd be seeing you again in my future. And I wasn't sure how, but at least this is one of the ways that I'm seeing you in my future. We have come to this point. So thank you for joining me on my podcast.
Thanks for having me. And yeah, it's so nice to be in a space to connect more deeply and see where else we end up meeting.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so as I have introduced in the introduction, Talia's done a lot of traveling, and I can see all the spiritual growth from a distance, and I haven't asked you about it directly. And I think that spiritual growth that comes from traveling, solitude, and being having joyful experiences with new people, strangers, all the above. I just feel that I can see that embodiment in you, and that in your spiritual self. And you're doing so much work in the spiritual world as well. And I'm just curious, what has that travel looked like for you? You know, that solo travel, and what have your biggest takeaways in relation to this travel?
Mm, wow. I love talking about traveling because, firstly, there's so many different ways to travel. So, I've done quite a few different types of travel, like categories of travel, whatever you want to call it. And for me, it is an experience that you'll never regret. Even if things maybe don't go your way or are challenging, it's like living in that trust of like, this is the challenge that I needed to face. And this is what this land is giving me, or this place I'm staying, or this person I'm meeting, because it's so you can just start to see how much when you surrender, things happen because you are like putting yourself in situations where you just have no grounding. So you're kind of just leaving it all up to the universe and going into things without plans and just seeing how everything just works out. And I think it's just such an ultimate surrender and such a beautiful way to really tap into your spirituality and that trust. And yeah, also just learning from so many different people. And it's been such a beautiful journey, and I'm very grateful to have been on that journey and to continue being on that journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm curious, what does that surrender look like and feel like for you?
Yeah, so the first time I left home was I moved to the US for a year, and that was a surrender, but also I had a job, I had a place to live. So, yes, I was showing up somewhere new, but I kind of had some structure and a plan. The next time I went, I basically very quickly decided that I was gonna show up in Australia, go to Fiji on the way because I was in LA, and that was just like I had no idea what I was doing. Like I did not plan it. It was like a week before. And I was like, I don't even know how long I'm going for. I packed like a tiny bag and I was like, I'm just going. And yeah, in Fiji, it was very interesting because it's just such a different way of approaching life. Because obviously, the US and the UK, like, there's a lot of similarities. And Fiji was just so different because the people there, like, there's this concept called Fiji time where everyone's just like, you know, people think you're weird if you're like stressed out. They're like, what are you doing? And, you know, I went to stay on this island that was 5 hours away from the main island, and there was no, like, I couldn't get anywhere without a boat, basically. It was completely remote and there was no Wi-Fi. And I just went there and I was like, wow, this is the first time where I'm just surrendering into that. And yeah, I think that surrender is like, it's just that allowing and just seeing where life is going to take you, because life is always taking you somewhere, but sometimes you have to like allow it to and create the space for that to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and that's such an interesting experience to, like you said, people in Fiji are like, "Why are you stressed out?" Like, I feel that is such a unique place to be in the world. I can't even imagine that, and just having that no Wi-Fi just sounds like you have to be present. Like you have no option but to be present, which is really cool. And that you were in that experience. And like you said, surrendering to this moment because you had no other option, which is amazing. That's so cool. And I'm curious about the solo aspect of it because so many people are scared to travel solo. And, you know, a lot of people don't feel comfortable spending time in solitude. And I'm a big believer that solitude is so important in your self growth, in your relationships, literally just absolutely anything. Because I think that it brings you to a place of being more grounded in your body and knowing
Mm,
yourself more and more authentic. And because if you surround yourself with people all the time, or like in this case with traveling, if you travel with someone, naturally your travel is going to be influenced by the person you're traveling with, just inevitably. But when you solo travel, you get to kind of call all the shots, and you have this own experience where you're taking it in the way that you want to take it in. So I'm
Mm,
curious, what did that look like for you?
yeah, that's a great question. I read this quote that was, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was essentially saying that the divine comes to you when you are alone, basically, or like you realize your divinity when you're alone. And yes, you can experience that through intimacy and sharing love with someone else, but you can only deeply feel that love with someone else when you're aware of your own divinity. And so when you are in situations by yourself, solo traveling the world, you are really coming home to yourself in new ways of like really learning to rely on yourself, trust in yourself, and experiencing the divinity within you. I mean, I cried so much, and just that's just like you coming home to yourself, in so many ways. And I think so many people never even experience that because they don't even spend more than like a few hours at a time alone. And I think just something crazy happens when you are just spending so much time alone. And there'd be times where I wouldn't meet anyone for a while and I would want to, but I think the universe was saying, like, no, you need to sit with everything that's coming up for you alone. And then I would meet someone at the perfect time. And then I'd spend a few days with them. And then sometimes, yeah, I was hanging out with people and I was like, actually, like, I prefer being alone because it does affect your vibration. It does affect the course of where things are going to take you. When you're in your own energy field, you call all the shots and you know that you can take full responsibility for what you're attracting. Whereas when you're with someone else, like what you might do, or like you're catering to their needs as well, which isn't a bad thing. But I just think where I was at certain times, I really had to be alone. And I was someone before who really struggled to be alone. And so it was a big challenge. And I'm really grateful that I did it.
That's when you said taking full responsibility for what you're attracting, I wrote that down. I'm like, that's so cool because like you said, you are coming home to yourself and you are recognizing your divinity, and it's that soul within you, that spirit within you, that divinity within you that's actually doing the attracting. And like you said, when you're alone, it's your full responsibility in terms of what you're receiving, where you're going, and that's amazing. And I'm curious, like, how did you go from being someone who was really scared to be alone to then solo travel?
Yeah, I think I just did it. I just went for it. And I knew I needed to do it because I have had issues with like codependency, not in a relationship, just with friends. And yeah, just very much knew that I needed to face a lot of things on my own. And the only way to do anything is just to do it, right? So I think that might not be helpful for some people, but I think I just knew. And also, there was no one at the time who was like thinking about doing it with me. Like there wasn't an option. Like either I wasn't going to do it or I was going to do it alone type of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. There's definitely not a lot of people who'd be willing to just drop everything to go travel like
Yeah,
that. But it's
exactly.
amazing that you did. And it's interesting that we get these intuitive nudges knowing that we need to do something. Like no one else is telling us, "Oh, you need to do this." It's from the inside out, which I think is so cool because it's when we listen to the either the voice in our body or our soul. I've learned that people listen to their soul a little differently. Like for example, sometimes when I am talking to my soul, I ask a question and it has a curtain reveal. which is really interesting, but it's just everyone experiences those intuitive nudges differently, and it leads you to amazing places. And like
Exactly.
there's plenty of evidence that it leads you to amazing places. And it's cool that you addressed your codependency by just ripping the band-aid because of following this knowing. And yeah, I had something else to ask about the codependency, and it is definitely leaving my mind. Ah, okay, that's all right. If I remember, I will come back to it. I'll come back to it. Oh, I do remember it. I do
Okay.
remember it. There we go. My favorite quote is, "You don't have to be confident to be courageous." And I don't know where I heard that, but I think this is a beautiful example of it, that you probably didn't feel confident going into all this, being like, "I know how this is all gonna go down. We're good. Like, I know everything what to do. We're good." You took that leap of faith and you faced fear face to face, and you said, "I'm gonna take that step anyways," which is so cool. And it's cool what's on the other side of that fear. Like, and a lot
Yeah.
came from that other side of the fear for you, which is so cool. And so I'm curious, we were talking about how sometimes you'd not see anyone for days, sometimes you'd stay with a few people, etc. What did those relationships of any kind look like during your travels? Like the people you met, anything?
I mean, I met so many different people. Some who are still my best friends now, some that it was just a passing conversation that was inspiring or not inspiring. It's just, you just never know who you're going to meet. Like when you're in hostels, when you're driving in the middle of nowhere in New Zealand, it's just, yeah, it really does show you how exactly who you need to meet at that time will show up in your life, because that just happens so many times. And yeah, I met so many amazing teachers, healers. I obviously did my, not obviously, well, I did my yoga teacher training, so I met great people there. It was all different capacities that I met people in. And yeah, it was really beautiful to just meet so many people from around the world. I'm really grateful to have that in my life.
Yeah, and that's cool that, some people are still some of your best friends to this point after your travels, and then some people were just passing conversations. And I love how you said that people show up at the right time. I I feel like I've definitely thought of that, but I've never really put that into perspective of like everyone in my life. I focus on the romantic relationships, but it's true that everyone in your life kind of shows up at the right time to bring you to where you are today. And it's cool that you met so many different types of people, including the healers, which when we talk about your social media, I'm gonna tell people to go look at that stuff because it's really cool. Just all the like videos and pictures you have, like with healers or with the people that you met, and it's amazing that you recorded those experiences.
Yeah, I
But
wish I did it more, but I was like wanting to be present. But now
yeah,
looking back, I'm like, oh, maybe I should have recorded more, but it is what it is.
yeah, it is what it is. But I feel you. There's that struggle between being present and wanting to share your
Yeah.
experience with others. I feel you so much on that. And speaking about your social media with just what you have on it, I noticed that there's a lot that you talk about in terms of nature and the connection between, the spiritual and self-growth and nature. And I'm curious if you're open to talking more about how you see the connection between nature and spirituality.
Yeah. I love nature.
Me too.
So I see the universe as mirrors. Everything is the same, everything's connected. So there's so many lessons to learn from nature that is the same as us. And nature reminds us of the fact that we are nature. It reminds me of that, and it brings me back into presence. You know, if you like even look at like the veins on a leaf, like it's the details that there are and the way that everything is just working out in nature. Like there's such minute patterns in it that are working, and there's like the macrocosm and the microcosm of it. And yeah, I just feel so at peace when I'm in nature, and I love it. And that was one of the other reasons I went to so many places I did, was just to be able to swim and just be barefoot and just be in nature, you know, because I live in London. Well, we're up in London, which is a city. So for me, it was just so beautiful to come home to that and be reminded of who we are, yeah, because we are nature.
Mhm, mhm. I'm a big believer in that as well, and
Yeah,
I can't imagine going from a city to going to all these beautiful nature places.
yeah.
Being a nature person myself, like, I have some access to more low-key nature places. Well, actually, that's false. I definitely have access to, like, pretty good nature places, but, like, it's not, like, right outside my window. But at the same time, I don't live in a city either, and I just can't imagine, like, that must have felt so magical from going through from a city to so many beautiful nature places. I feel that. I feel that in my heart.
Oh my
I
gosh, it's
can't
amazing.
imagine.
Yeah, just being in like the vastness of it too just
Mhm.
reminds you of like, you know, we're nothing and everything all at once.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, for sure. And that's, like, why my favorite part of nature are mountains. Because the mountain ranges can just feel so vast, and I notice, like, I'm so small compared to these tall mountains, yet I'm a piece of it as well, and I love that you said that you felt like you were coming home when you went to all these nature places because we're in nature, and I'm curious if there's been, like, 1 or 2 experiences in nature where you felt the most connected or any
Mhm.
sort of cool experiences, whether it be internal, external, something like that.
Wow. There's just been so many. I mean, in Bali, like the water ceremonies are really beautiful. They do water purification ceremonies, and we did one which was where there was like a fresh water stream meeting the ocean at this temple, and we did this whole ceremony, and then we went in the ocean, and it was just so magical. And then times where I'm just like in solitude, you know. I just also I love to swim naked, so I love when I can just be alone in nature and just connect with that. Because it is also a feminine journey. All of this I'm talking about is a, was a deep homecoming in my feminine, and the earth is the mother, which is the feminine, and it's just you feel how held you are when you're just on the ground with no separation with clothes or anything.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have to try to swim naked too now.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's really cool. And oh my god, I don't even know where I'd find a place where I could do that. I'm sure it exists. I'm sure it exists.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah. And I don't know. Oh my god, my heart just so excited thinking about all your experiences. Like those just sound so amazing, and the ceremony in Bali sounds so cool as well. And thinking about the way the water connects too is really cool. I kind of see the way the water connects, like blood in our veins, and like
Mhm.
that blood is like we need that blood in our body to live. And I see, water is also a source of life, right? Whether it be a source of life that helps us, other animals, or just has so much life in it out in nature. Like water holds so much life in it. And I just, like you said, I think there's just so many connections between us and nature because we are nature and just we see all these patterns. But going back to like this being the feminine journey, what would you say have been the main differences between before you left and since you came back in terms of getting in touch and connecting with your feminine?
I mean, so many. I went to a very intense school and intense university, and just generally where I grew up is very masculine, like cities are built in very masculine ways, even the tall buildings, just the lack of nature and just the pace of life and what's valued, and just everything I was conditioned was just very masculine. I didn't even know what it was to be feminine at all before I left. And like even when I was living in the US, like my best friend I made, like she is very relaxed in a lot of ways, and I was always like, no, we have to have plans and we have to like have structure, and we like I'm not staying in bed that late, and like very like that. So I even like, you know, it's been a journey, but I guess when I started to learn more about it and just the idea of receiving and surrendering, and it just the feminine is the mystery, it's the unknown, and that's why there's a lot of fear about going into it, because it requires you letting go of a lot of the structure. And like, not to say that you have to do something that radical to connect with it, but that was just my journey. And yeah, just the whole way I see life, and like the ability to just be slow and the ability to receive, and even knowing what it is to connect with my heart and my body, and seeing the value in those qualities of me, which I think before it's like we just take that for granted and we focus on other things. There's just so much, and it's just such a beautiful journey that is cyclical and ongoing. And
Mm.
because it's a circle, it's like you're returning to it over and over again, and each month you shed the parts of you that are holding on and not able to let go. And yeah, even living with my cycle, like I literally had no idea what that was. So basically I've learned like everything in the past, not even that long, what, 2 years or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's a lot to learn when you're going from a very masculine state of mind to very feminine.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I feel you on not understanding my cycle before either. Just before I started to get into this feminine masculine work, I did not focus on my cycle whatsoever.
No
And
one teaches you to do that. Like
what?
no one would speak about it before.
Yeah, yeah, which blows my mind because that's even down to like a biological stance. Like that's not even like a spiritual thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it is, but it is. But it's just it's not even something taught like in school by your doctors.
Yeah.
Like it's just not really talked about and it's so helpful to know. Do you track your cycle?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do now too, but I've only been tracking it for probably like 2 months. So like this is
Wow.
so new and it's so helpful. But when you were talking about, you know, surrendering and letting go, I'm curious, is there what have you let go of in that time period?
So much. I think it's letting go of so many things. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned, I went to a very intense school and university, so there's just so many ideas of what you should do, or what is good, what is wrong, what is successful, what is, also letting go of a lot of pain that I was holding on to from my childhood that I never addressed. Like before I barely even would cry. So it's like coming home to your emotions and just like feeling things for the first time, where because when you're in such a fast pace, you don't have time to feel. You're just taught to like think that that is holding you back or slowing you down or weak. So it's letting go of like all these beliefs about who I thought I was or who I thought I should be, and really just like having an ego death or several ego deaths. Like this guy I met when I started traveling, he said travel was like the biggest ego death. Like you don't have any clothes, you don't have any belongings, you don't have any people, and it's just you. And you really get to decide and understand who you are, and that takes letting go of everything you thought you were.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. That makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense. You don't have all the same structure or, like you said, things on you. You're leaving so much behind, and like we were saying earlier, just that solo of the solo leading to returning to that like divinity and coming home to yourself, and that makes a lot of sense. And like you were saying that you feel like there's no time to feel your feelings, and it's so true that in this society, I mean, currently I'm not in a 9 to 5 job, or quote unquote standard job, right? But I know that when I was, it's just, if something was really triggering of some sort, I didn't have the time to go cry about it and process it. And by the time I got out of work, I either have like repressed it so much that I forgot about it, or that I just have more things to do and gotta keep repressing it. And it's so cool that intentionally, intentionally taking that time to step aside and travel, even if it's just for like a day or a weekend. Like I feel that we create, like you said, that space to be able to feel your feelings and allow yourself to let go of whatever is holding you back, or like you said, like whether it be like the pain from childhood, or let go of certain um societal standards, if that
yeah,
makes sense.
that,
Yeah. And because you're stepping away from it all, and I think that that distance away from things just helps, like that new environment with just yourself just reminds you that you are more than what you've placed yourself into or what you've been in. You're stepping out of that network of the people that you're in. Like you are not your network. You are not the place that you live in. You are separate. You are a separate entity from that. And it's cool that it can help you get to a place of surrender and letting go,
yeah. Well, that's
because you
why,
wouldn't.
yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
continue.
because that's the thing. I think people, a lot of people go traveling after they graduate and go on holiday, and that's why I say there's so many different types of ways to travel, because even when you're just going abroad, like there might be changes, but I think the way I did it was just so intentional in that it wasn't all fun. Because actually going into the feminine is the darkness. And the reason why most people don't give themselves that space is because they're afraid to face it. And I knew that if I wanted to show up as the healer that I know I am, and I knew I was, that I had to go into that, because how could I help others do that if I hadn't done it myself into the depths of the depths? So I think most people don't do it because they're afraid, because even the thought of them not having a day planned is scary, because that used to be me. If I didn't have plans one night, I would freak out. I'd be like, oh my God, like I have to be alone. Like I need to have plans with friends. Like that's what I have to do every night and all day.
Mhm, mhm, and like you said, that's that codependency, which I
Yeah,
wanna on in a second, but it just sounds like you knew your why was bigger than your fear. You knew
exactly.
you wanted to be a healer, and I think that we aren't taught to have a purpose. We're taught to have a career, and there can be a very big difference between the two.
Mm.
And, so I think that it'd be so amazing if we could teach more people to, we are actually teaching more people to step into their purpose and their body and themselves. And because we know the power of that. And like you just said, like you wanted to do it first because you wanted to help other people and you went into those depths of the depths, which is a beautiful way to explain it, just stepping into that darkness and you just have no idea. It's that mystery. But in terms of like the codependency, I feel you. I remember one time in college, I mean, there's so many examples, but for me, a lot of it had to do with relationships. And one time in college, I kept saying I wanted to study abroad, but I never ever did because I didn't want to leave my boyfriend. And the reason why I bring this up is because I thought of this morning and I'm like, wow, I should make a post about that because that's such a big statement for me because I love travel and travel has been something that everyone knows I love. And just the fact that I didn't go do that when I was in college because I was codependent. And it's just when you're in that codependent mindset, I feel like you hold yourself back from so many more things, but you don't even realize it because you're sitting in your comfortability. And we need that why to kind of like put a flame under our butt to go be uncomfortable and do the things that will bring us more healing and bring us back to our body. And like you said, that's also a feminine journey, like coming back home. And I feel that your journey has been so beautiful. And I feel like the feminine journey often is, even though it's very ugly, it's also very beautiful at the same time.
Yeah, because you also go into this like timelessness, like when you really go in, like I don't know how long this is gonna last. Like everything feels so intense and there's no words, and it's like not many people do this journey like this at my age, and I really felt like, what the hell is happening? And so
Yeah,
now I'm in a point where I'm back in London and I'm really inviting balance in now because we need that balance. You need to have both. And for so long, I became so anti-masculine energy. I was like, I don't want to do anything ever again. I'm done. And yeah, it's been beautiful to like really integrate it back. But yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
yeah, yeah. And we often go to the extremes before we find that balance. And
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you know Jay Shetty because I think he's from London too, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, okay. So I remember in one of his podcast episodes on his On Purpose podcast, that he was saying we often go to the other extreme before we find the balance because like we don't know what that other side is like. So of course we're going to just if we're on this journey of trying to be like that, we're going to often just dive into it. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with diving deep into that other extreme first and recognizing where that balance is because how are you going to know what the balance is for you, especially like, you particularly if you don't experience both sides, you don't have a scale. So it's just interesting when he said that because I'm like, sometimes I hold shame about having gone to another extreme and that not being it either and realizing, oh no, I needed to go there in order to find the balance that worked for me.
yeah. I literally did a post about this yesterday, I think, and it's so true that you can't know what balance is for you if you don't experience being out of balance. And so, for anyone who is out of balance in any area of your life, know that you can get to that balance, but just be in where you are now and hold that vision. And yeah, my vision's definitely coming to life more now. And this is my journey, but I also think it doesn't have to be that extreme. You can still go into your feminine and be in your regular life too. That's also what I want to
Mhm.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and like you said, everyone's journey is different, and everyone's gonna have different intuitive nudges that's leading them in the direction that works best for them to coming
Exactly.
home to themselves. So, Talia, to I want the listeners to know how to contact you and how to work with you and what you're up to. So, yeah, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. So, if any of you are local to London listening, I am hosting various events here that basically bring you back in connection with yourself through different modalities and exercises and women's circles and all different things like that. I've trained in obviously the same as Alex in the Quantum Coaching Academy, and then also in yoga and in tantra, and I've done trauma and somatic. So I really do combine a blend of things. I work very intuitively in that way. I do one-to-one containers too, and I have a body and heart wisdom journey that I take people through, and also do very like bespoke work for people based on where they're at. Then I also have retreats coming up, which is very exciting. I just did one in Bali, and the next two I have are in 2025 in Paris and Iceland. So for your listeners, because this is a relationships podcast, the Iceland one is designed for partners to come to. So the Paris one's just women's, but the Iceland one's men and women's. That one's called Transcendence, and it's with my amazing teacher from Austin, Rachel Justine, and she has taught me so much, and so it's such an honor to be working with her. So please get in touch if you want more information about those retreats, because they're just amazing luxury retreats where you will have huge transformations. I love retreats. They're literally so powerful. I've done so many now, and it's just so amazing to be bringing them to people because I love them so much. And on top of that, I have my Wisdom Within podcast as well. And I'm also doing an online event in a few weeks as well. So a lot going on. So just follow me on Instagram or visit my website, taliapamensky.com. And I am coming out with a lot of things now, and it's about that balance, right? You know, like now I'm feeling more grounded to have more structure to bring all these things out, whereas before I just lived in timelessness. So it's great. I'm very excited about everything I'm doing, and I'm just here to serve and help people realize their own power.
And all of those will be in the show notes. And I really want to comment back on the feminine masculine here. So I think that maybe in the past you would have been doing all these things from a masculine standpoint of like do, gotta complete all this, get this done. But now you've come to this point of you can still have that masculine and have this structure to do these things and lead with your feminine, which is so cool. And I just want the listeners to know, like you were saying, like with the feminine, it's it doesn't have to take you over your life and you just sit there and do nothing, right? And just like be in your body. Like you can incorporate both and you can still be just as successful and doing the things you love with even more heart and even more quality and helping more people. So it's awesome. You're a great example of having found that balance. And yeah, like I said, I'm going to have these all in the show notes. And yeah, listeners, go take her up on this. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna actually go on my first retreat this month, actually next week. I
Wow.
almost forgot to say that to you earlier, but yeah, anyways, I'm excited to do that. And I can just tell from a distance, like already, that retreats are gonna be this is gonna be powerful, and any retreat, and especially probably one led by you, I'm sure is wonderful. So
Yes,
yeah.
I'd love to see you all there. So, yeah, it's been amazing to be here, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you too. Yay. And if you enjoyed this episode, please rate the show and share it with a friend, share it on social media, and tag me at Relationship of Your Dreams, and let's celebrate together. And DM me your next steps.